name is Fievel Mousewitz. I see that you're ready to hear a story, and I have a good one for you. I'm going to tell you about my adventures in America. I live in New York City now, but I didn't always live in America. It all started back in Russia in 1885. My family and I lived in a small mouse hole in a house in a little village called a shtetl. I guess I should tell you about my family. My mama and papa didn't have a lot of money, but there was always lots of love and fun in our house. I have an older sister named Tanya and a baby sister named Yasha. My story begins at Hanukkah, my favorite time of the year. Mama made a delicious breadcrumb dinner. She always been a good cook. We had just finished dinner when Papa picked up his violin and began to play. He played a special song, a song that he wrote just for me. Tanya and I danced and laughed and had a great time. Soon it was time to open our Hanukkah presents. Tanya got a babushka. That's a pretty scarf she wears on her head. Then it was my turn. Papa took the hat off his head and placed it on mine. It's the hat you see me wearing now, only this is no ordinary hat. This hat had been in our family for many years. My papa had gotten it from his papa, and so on down the line. The hat was a bit too large for me, but I want to tell you, I've never felt more proud of anything in my life. Tanya and I both gave Papa and Mama big hugs and thanked them for our presents. Next, Papa told us some stories. He always had great stories. He told us about the giant mouse of Minsk, who scared all the cats away. And then he told us about the princess with the long hair. She threw one end of her hair out the window of a tall tower, and the prince used it to climb up and visit her. Finally, Papa told us the best story of all, the story about America. We had heard it many times, but this was one story we never got tired of hearing. Papa told us that there were no cats in America. There were mouse holes in every wall and breadcrumbs on every floor. America sounded like the greatest place. We loved this story best of all, and this was the best Hanukkah we ever had. That is, until the cat sacks came. The cat sacks were a bunch of horrible cats who would come into a village and destroy it. On this night, the cat sacks destroyed our little village. They wrecked houses, burned everything, and left all of us homeless. It was then that Papa decided that our family would come to America. We traveled all across Europe and got on a big boat that was going to take us to America. I had never been on a boat before, and I was very excited when we got on board. I was having a great time on the boat, but then the big storm hit. It was the worst storm I had ever seen. Waves rocked the boat back and forth, and water crashed up on the deck, flooding everything. And then it happened. A huge wave hit the deck and washed me off the boat. I was floating in the ocean, calling for my papa, and I could see him on the ship calling my name. But there was nothing that either of us could do. For the first time in my life, I was all alone. Luckily for me, an empty bottle floated by, and I climbed into it. I floated along in the bottle for a very long time. I was wet and cold and tired. Finally, I landed on shore. When I climbed out of the bottle, I met a French painter named Henri. When I asked him where I was, he told me that I was in America. Bedloe's Island, to be exact. That's a small island right near New York City. Henri was there to supervise the building of the Statue of Liberty. I told Henri what had happened to me and that I wanted to find my family. He told me I should look for my family at the immigration building on Ellis Island. Henri was too busy tending to his statue to fly me there himself. But his friend Chantal, another pigeon, flew me to the immigration building. Before I left, Henri invited me to come back and see his statue when it was finished. Meanwhile, the boat carrying my family had landed. They had already passed through the immigration building. By the time I got there, they were gone. They were somewhere in New York City, but I didn't know where. I only knew that I had to find them. I was standing in front of the immigration building, feeling very sad and lonely, wondering what I was going to do, when someone came up next to me and introduced himself. His name was Warren T. Rat, and although he was a rat, he seemed very nice and helpful. He had a cockroach that worked for him named Digit. Digit was very smart and kept some sort of records for Warren. Only I don't think Digit liked it too much when Warren put his smelly cigar in the pocket where Digit lived. Anyway, Warren T. Rat told me that he knew where I could find my family. He even told me that he would take me to them in New York City. I should have known it was too good to be true. Warren didn't know where my family was. He just said that to trick me. He took me to a factory in New York City and left me with a big fat rat named Mo. This type of factory was called a sweatshop. There were many mice there working very hard, making clothes for very little money. But the worst part was that no one there was ever allowed to leave. I knew that if I couldn't get out of there, I would never find my family. I was never so miserable in my life as I went over to my sewing machine and began to work. Then one day something great happened. I made a real friend. I was walking in a sweatshop with a big pile of clothing in my hands, so I couldn't see where I was going. All of a sudden I crashed right into another mouse who was walking in the opposite direction. We were both okay, and as we cleaned up the mess, we introduced ourselves. His name was Tony Tiponi. He was an Italian immigrant who was an orphan. He was older than me and had been working in a sweatshop for a long time. He wanted to get out of there as much as I did. Tony and I got to be good friends. We would talk to pass the time. I told him about Russia and he told me about Italy and his life on the streets of New York. One day, we were looking out the window of the sweatshop. It was a long way down to the street. I told Tony that I wish we had that princess from the fairy tale my papa used to tell me. You remember, the one with the long hair. Then we could climb down her hair and escape from this terrible place. That gave Tony an idea. He started whispering the idea to some of the other mice. And soon the sweatshop was buzzing with excitement. All the mice went to work cutting and tying pieces of clothing together. Soon we had a long chain of material that we used for a rope. Some of the mice used some very strong thread to tie up Mo. And the rest of us tied one end of the rope to the leg of the table and threw the other end out the window. Then we all climbed out the window, down to the ground, and escaped. Finally, we were all free. Tony said he would help me find my family, but before we could start looking, I saw a mouse that looked like my papa. I ran off after him, but when I caught up, I found that it was not my papa after all. Then I went to look for Tony, but I couldn't find him either. Now I was really alone. I wandered around the city for hours. I walked past a school and saw all the happy mice in class. I looked into the window of an Italian restaurant. I was so hungry, and that food looked so good. Then I got lucky again. I turned the corner and Tony was there. I was really glad to see a friendly face, and Tony was glad to see me too. We started off to look for my family when something caught Tony's attention. There was a small rally being held by an Irish mouse named Bridget. She was very pretty, and I think Tony had a crush on her. She was talking about the problem that the mice in New York were having with the cats. I was confused because Papa told me that there were no cats in America. But Bridget kept talking about the terrible things that the cats were doing, especially one terrible game called the Mott Street Maulers. I was just about to tell Bridget that there were no cats in America when everyone began running away. When I turned around, I was face to face with the most ferocious cat I had ever seen. I just managed to slip away in time to hide and watch the Mott Street Maulers tear the street apart. When they were through with this street, they left to destroy another. Later that day, we met Gussie Mouseheimer, the richest and most powerful mouse in New York. She was very upset about the attacks by the cats, and she called for a big rally of many, many mice to be held the next day to try to come up with a plan to get rid of the cats. Tony, Bridget, and I were all going to be there. I found out later that during this time my family had been searching for me. They never gave up the hope that I was still alive. The next day the big rally was held. Mice from all over the city came to try and figure out what to do about the cats. Gussie spoke to the crowd about freedom and why we all came to America. She pointed to the Statue of Liberty across the harbor and reminded everyone of what it stood for. The crowd was very excited, but when the time came for a plan, everyone grew quiet. Once again, I thought of a story that my papa had told me. The story of the giant mouse of Minsk. A mouse so big that it scared away all the cats in the town. I thought if only we had that mouse here, that would show those cats. I whispered the story to Gussie, who thought for a moment, then announced that she had a plan. Everyone cheered and jumped around with excitement. The rally was a success. The next day, all the mice went to work on the plan. We were going to build our own version of the giant mouse of Minsk. While I was working one day, I heard a violin. I thought it could be my papa. The music was coming from a sewer grating. I climbed through and followed the sound down through the underground tunnels of the sewers. I finally came to a door with a sign over it that read, Mott Street Maulers. I looked through a window and saw that it was not my papa playing. It was that Warren T. Rat who had lied to me and tricked me. Then I learned something else. Warren T. Rat was no rat. He was a cat in disguise. He was one of the Mott Street Maulers. Just as I realized this, Warren spotted me through the window. He shouted to the other cats, and they all chased me back up through the sewers. I was almost out of the grating and back on the street when a paw reached up and pulled me back down. The cats took me to their headquarters and locked me in a cage. Now I was sure I was never going to find my family. Then, just when things seemed their worst, I got lucky again. The cat that was guarding me turned out to actually like mice. This cat named Tiger really wanted to be my friend. When I told Tiger how I lost my family, he felt sorry. He opened the cage door and looked the other way. I gave him a big hug and thanked him. But then suddenly, alarms went off. I ran out of the headquarters, followed by all of the maulers. Only this time, I outran them and made it out to the street. Gussie recognized Warren. When I told everyone that he was really a cat, he got angry and started a fire. Everyone ran around in a panic, trying to put out the fire. Just then, it was time to release our secret weapon. From the top of the street came our homemade version of the giant mouse of Minsk. The mice had worked very hard building it from pieces of wood and cloth. It was mounted on a large platform with big wheels, and it rolled down the street chasing the terrified cats. Our giant mouse chased the cats down to a dock at the end of the street where a boat was just pulling away. The cats leapt onto the boat just as the giant mouse rolled into the water at the end of the dock. The boat pulled away, headed for China. We were finally rid of the cats, and many mice stood at the end of the dock and cheered. I was back up the street, helping to fight the fire. All of a sudden, I was hit by a blast of water from a fireman's hose, and I was knocked off my feet. My hat went flying in one direction, and I was carried along by the stream of water in another direction. When I finally stopped moving, I found myself in an alley where many homeless mice lived. They had all been living on the street for some time and had no hopes of finding their families. As I settled down to spend the night with them, I couldn't help but think that I would never see my family again either. What I didn't know at the time was that Tony and Bridget found my hat. They were looking everywhere for me, calling my name. At the same time, my family was also looking for me, and they were calling my name. They heard each other and met. When Papa saw Tony with my hat, he knew that they were all looking for the same mouse. They all set off together to find me. Meanwhile, my friend Tiger the cat was up in a nearby tree. He saw Tony, Bridget, and my family searching for me, and he decided to help with the search. I had fallen asleep in the alley, but I woke up to hear a violin. Only this time I knew it was my papa, because he was playing my special tune, the one he wrote for me back in Russia. I ran down the alley, turned the corner, and there I saw Tony, Bridget, Mama, Papa, Tanya, and baby Yasha all riding on Tiger's back. I ran to them with tears in my eyes. I never thought I would see them again, and now here I was, safe in Papa's arms. We all cried and laughed and danced and sang. Papa thought he would never see me again, but we all learned that day that in America, you never say never. A short time later, we got a visit from Henri the pigeon. He had come to tell me that the Statue of Liberty was completed. He brought a few of his friends to carry my whole family to see the statue. He was so proud. We flew on the pigeons' backs and got a spectacular view of the statue, gleaming in the harbor, welcoming all the other immigrants to America, the land of freedom. Well, that's my story. I hope you liked it. Goodbye for now, and remember, never say never.